On Sunday, we started a new series that will take us through the academic year, a series on wisdom from the book of Proverbs. We received an invitation to start a journey toward wisdom from Proverbs chapter 8. It's the longest poem in the book of Proverbs, a personification of wisdom, giving us this invitation in the person of a woman singing in the city square or the city marketplace. And as we went through that sermon and studied that chapter, got a couple of very insightful questions in addition to the ones that I answered on Sunday. First, this question, and it comes in a couple of parts. It's thought-provoking. Is God's creation of wisdom incomplete in the creation of the universe and completed in his creation of man and woman? Or is it complete in itself before mankind? And then the second part, is mankind complete in part because wisdom is in existence? What is thought-provoking about that question is it takes us right to the heart of the meaning of this person wisdom in Proverbs chapter 8. Wisdom is spoken of as begotten by Yahweh. So this is not wisdom is not a quality that is outside of God and that God interacts with. This is a quality that is deeply a part of who God is, and God gives this wisdom life and gives it eternally in a person, the person of wisdom. And so this is a Trinitarian kind of language. The doctrine of the Trinity was developed much later, after the period of the New Testament. And it was formulated in part from passages like this and words like begotten, and reaching all the way back into the Old Testament. So here's the key idea related to this question. The wisdom of God was complete in itself before the creation of the universe and before the creation of human beings. There is a notion that God created the universe and created human beings because he needed us to be complete. In this context of Proverbs 8, wisdom was part of creating the world because wisdom was learning more. It was, in a sense, completing itself or consummating itself. None of this is biblical. Wisdom was complete in itself, begotten by God, because God is complete in himself. Remember the origin of the name Yahweh from Exodus chapter 3 is I am that I am. God is self-existent. He depends on nothing outside of himself for his life, and so he is complete in himself. And there's an old word that we don't really use anymore. It's one of the forgotten treasures of theology. It's the word blessedness. Another word for that idea is plenitude. That God has bounty, plenty. He is blessed in himself, and he is the source of all blessedness, and we were created out of that blessedness. We were created out of God's completeness. We were not created out of some need that God had to complete himself, as if God was were self-actualizing or something like that, the way we would put it today. Some of the importance of this idea is that when God created us, he did it out of sheer goodness. He did it purely because he is good, not because he wanted anything, not because he needed anything. And this sets our relationship to God on the right footing. that we receive out of God's goodness and uh, utterly out of His goodness. We do not receive with a sense of conditions that God somehow is saying, now I hope you'll meet my expectations here, or I won't be complete, or I'll be really disappointed, or something. This is not the God that we worship in the Scriptures, and should not be the God we worship in our lives. Unfortunately, the idea of God's blessedness, as I said, has fallen into disuse. And we have tried to make God more relational by making him needy and talking about his creation of us as if he needed us, and kind of sentimentalizing God in that way. What this actually does is create a sort of dysfunctional God. How do you like it in human relationships when someone is only relating to you out of need? Don't we really want healthy human relationships that flow out of the goodness of love, or a kind of non-neediness, that I want your good, and I am seeking your good, not because I need something from you, but because I love you. The kind of relationship that flows out of an incomplete God is, frankly, a sick relationship. And that is reflected in much of our approach to Christianity as modern people. So, a lot to think about in that question. The second part of the question, of course, is mankind complete because of the existence of wisdom? The answer to that is yes. The answer here is, what makes us complete is God's completeness in himself. That God needs nothing. We need God. And that is the basis, the foundation for the relationship. Great question. Lots to talk about there, but just kind of a sketch of an answer. Another thought-provoking question. Wisdom is referenced in the feminine, yet later in the chapter, the parallel to the gospel, Jesus Christ, who is masculine. Explain, please. So this question is referring to the fact that in Proverbs 8, the personification of wisdom is a woman. And then at the end of that chapter, this woman sings about that we are blessed if we love wisdom and if we listen constantly to wisdom, and that this is the source of our life. So that is, in the New Testament, an interpretation of Jesus Christ as the ultimate person of wisdom in the Godhead. And so we looked at, for instance, Colossians chapter 1, and we saw that Jesus is spoken of as the creator, the fullness of God, the image of the invisible God, the source of all of our life. This is all language flowing from Proverbs chapter 8. So the question is, how can wisdom be feminine in Proverbs chapter 8 and then revealed to be masculine in Jesus Christ? A very tangled question because of the fraught nature today of our view of gender and sexuality, but also going right to the heart of many questions of biblical interpretation. So let's walk around this a couple of minutes. Jesus is revealed in many incomplete ways in the Old Testament. The Old Testament is prophesying the coming of Jesus using all kinds of symbols. Jesus is revealed as a man at the burning bush, and anytime you see the angel of the Lord in the Old Testament, you're looking at the image of a man, a human being, who is speaking as God, as Yahweh. And so there is that revelation of him, which correlates more neatly in our minds with the New Testament revelation of Christ. He is also revealed in sacrifices of animals. And so the blood of bulls and goats, as Hebrews speaks of it, all of that is testifying to the coming sacrifice of Jesus. So there is a kind of composite nature to the Old Testament's prefiguring of who Jesus is and what he is going to do. Because Jesus is prophesied in the form of a scapegoat, let's say, on the Day of Atonement in Leviticus, we wouldn't ascribe goat-like qualities to Jesus. We wouldn't think of him as an animal. No, as just a picture from that point of view, from that ritual, an indication of what Jesus is going to do. So the Old Testament works this way. It's like a mosaic of many different pieces all forming a complete picture. There's another aspect to this, and that is what I'll call the subversive nature of the Old Testament in relation to surrounding cultures in the ancient Near East. And this remains true on down into the New Testament. So why would Proverbs portray wisdom as a woman in Proverbs chapter 8? And it's not like this is an incidental thing, a kind of one-off in Proverbs. No, it runs throughout Proverbs. In the very next chapter of Proverbs, there's a kind of parallel contrast between the woman of wisdom and the woman of folly. And so the idea is that there are two women out there. They're both inviting you, but you have to distinguish between the two. You have to make a decision which invitation to take. One is an invitation to wisdom, the other to folly. And so that is a feature of the first 9 chapters of the book of Proverbs and all of those discourses. It is also a feature in what in many ways is the climax of Proverbs, and that is Proverbs 31. The woman of wisdom is a woman who is alive in this world, and you should, young man, get yourself attached to her. You need to know who she is, and you need to form that partnership with her. And this is speaking of literal marriage, and it's also speaking of kind of joining your mind, your soul, and your heart to wisdom, which is the call of the entire book. So, why would Proverbs do this? One reason is that Proverbs, as addressed to sons, young men, Proverbs is portraying wisdom as attractive, as, if I can put it this way, beguiling, charming, wonderful, beautiful. You want to be around her. And I think we need this. We need the idea of wisdom as something that is powerfully attractive and delightful. And so you want to associate with it, as opposed to wisdom as a kind of stern and slightly weepy and mournful lecturer. And that's not the image of wisdom here. That's not beguiling. It might be important, it might be valuable, but it's sure not the most attractive idea in the world. So the idea of wisdom is that it is this energy in the world that is drawing us, and it is God's own energy. And so it is portrayed in that way. But there's another reason, and it's what I referred to a moment ago as the subversive reason. There are lots of goddesses in the ancient Near East, and there are lots of kind of parallel presentations of wisdom. Proverbs is not unique in the ancient Near East. There are other kind of proverbial wisdom literature kinds of writings out there. So let's think about Egypt. Egypt, obviously a reference point for Israel's historical experience and a negative one, a place of slavery, a place of where the inferiority of the Israelites was kind of locked in. Well, this is in many scholars' minds, Proverbs 8 is kind of a pushback or a subversive poem against the supposed cultural dominance and superiority of Egypt. Egypt has this goddess, Mahat, and Mahat is a personification, again, of wisdom, justice, balance in the cosmos. Mahat, pictured as an idealized young woman, she is holding the scales in which your heart is weighed after you die. And so she's kind of the queen of Judgment Day, as it were. The Egyptians, very confident, absolutely unwavering in their pride in human wisdom. We've got this. We've got this wired. We understand the world technologically. We understand it aesthetically. We understand the beginning. We understand the end. We got it. And we're the most powerful and oldest and wealthiest nation on the planet, at least at that time. And so there. You all just follow us and you'll be fine. Proverbs 8 is saying, let me show you the real wisdom, the real woman. And so it's a kind of contrast, a pushback against other goddesses, or Mahat and other goddesses in the ancient Near East, that present a very confident, closed system of knowledge. And the key here is maybe the word closed, because Egypt is a nation of antiquity, a nation of longevity. The culture is almost static in its art and architecture, because we've got this. Nothing more to add, especially from you. You just need to follow and fit in. Israel does not have that. Israel is vulnerable. Israel is in formation. Israel must remain open because the world is fallen and it is in a kind of lawless chaos. And because of that, Israel is only going to flourish as it learns and enters into a process of opening itself to wisdom. And so a big part of the message of Proverbs 8 is those Egyptians. They don't have this wired. They don't even know the most fundamental thing about the world. They don't know the Creator. And they don't know the blessedness of the Creator, the fullness of the Creator, the fact that the Creator is one, and they don't want to be blessed in that blessedness. So these are some major reasons why wisdom is portrayed as a woman in Proverbs 8. This kind of pushback against surrounding culture continues on in the New Testament, maybe even more fundamentally. John 1, in the beginning was the Logos, the Word, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God. Logos, again, an idea for wisdom, but in the Greek concept of this, it's impersonal. It's about laws and forces and rules. It's not about personhood. John saying, no, we know him. The Logos is a person, and it is the person of Jesus Christ. So these are some of the considerations. as to why the Old Testament in Proverbs 8 portrays wisdom as a woman, but in the ultimate revelation of Jesus Christ, he is the son of David. He is a man. Great questions. I look forward to seeing you again this coming Sunday.